Hey everyone, this is Paul. So this video that I'm doing is kind of an odd placement in my already established playlists, because I've got, of course, my video game reviews, my voiceovers, my just Harry Potter, and of course my Catholic stuff. So where am I going to put this when it's kind of sort of a review, it's kind of sort of a preview, it's kind of sort of got some undertones of Catholicism to it, and it's related to a video game, so where do I place it? Well, the question rather is not so much where should I place this video, but where was Nintendo hoping to place the Fire Emblem franchise, is what I'm going to attempt to talk about right now. And that is Awakening's untold ending. Yes, you heard me right. If you've beaten Fire Emblem Awakening, you'll know that there's two possible endings that you can get. There's one. Well, I better not say it, just in case you haven't beaten Awakening, but suffice to say there's two different ways to beat the game. But there's also a hidden ending that isn't necessarily obvious when you play the game, but more so when you look at what was going on in the minds of the creators when they were making Awakening. Suddenly, that lackluster final battle that you can beat in 2 turns if you're good enough becomes a battle to the death. Literally. And here's why. So a little bit of a history lesson. So Fire Emblem, as you heard me say in my Fire Emblem Fates review video, Fire Emblem's been around since 1990 in Japan. And it wasn't until 2003 that the series came over to North America, primarily because Marth and Roy were in Super Smash Bros. Melee. And at the time, people were like, who are these two swordsmen? And that sparked enough interest that Nintendo and Intelligent Systems said, well, I guess we can bring over the 7th Fire Emblem to North America. And quite frankly, I was blown away by the series. I mean, the whole turn-based RPG reminded me of how much I loved playing chess when I was a kid, and this was like chess, but more complicated, more personality, better graphics, amazing music, and a really good storyline. When I first played Path of Radiance in, I think it was 2005, near the beginning of the game, when one of the characters actually dies, like, not just, like, fades away like they do in Super Mario 64, but, like, dies, gets stabbed in the gut by a sword, and you're actually standing over his grave. I was like, whoa, games are really capable of that? I mean, Fire Emblem blew my mind back then, and maybe there were RPGs in the day like Final Fantasy that were better than that, but to my young teenage mind, this was intense. This was a franchise I wanted to stick around. And unfortunately, I didn't get too much more of Fire Emblem. After that, I got Radiant Dawn, which was not only an incredible sequel, but one of the best games I've ever played, period. But then we got the lackluster Shadow Dragon, which was a remake of the first. You can see why Fire Emblem started becoming a bit less grand and a lot more like, Nintendo, are you losing your touch again? Well, actually, believe it or not, for once, Nintendo and the fans were in the same playing field. And Awakening was almost destined to share Kid Icarus's fate. So, the sales after Radiant Dawn and beyond were starting to steadily decline. And I don't even see why. Radiant Dawn was so incredible. But it got lackluster reviews, and I think perhaps the unbalanced difficulty was what threw people off, because like you've got part of the game where you're controlling this underpowered army, and it feels like classic Fire Emblem. But then you switch to part 2 and you control the Crimean army, and then, wait, all of a sudden I'm controlling someone that's on their 3rd tier class when most of my units are only on their 1st tier? Yeah, that's probably what ended up doing it. So, Nintendo basically made this deal with Intelligent Systems, which were the developers of the game. Nintendo said, your franchise isn't doing so good, publishing-wise. If Awakening doesn't sell, I think it was 1 million copies, then your franchise is toast. Make one more game, that's it. So after Shadow Dragon, Intelligent Systems just poured their all into Awakening. And I mean their all. I don't know if I've ever seen a sequel outside of Super Smash Bros. Stay so close to the award-winning formula and yet add so much. I mean, let me just attempt to explain how much this game adds from both a technical and a content standpoint. It has DLC, which takes up a significant chunk of your SD card's memory. It's got tons and tons and tons of new items, more skills than I know how to count. Every single character has their own voice, their own critical hit voice, their own level up voice, which changes depending on how good they're leveled up. Then they have their own support. You can get married and have more kids. Then you can change classes. You can change perspectives within the battle. You can make street pass teams. You can download like rare weapons and Fire Emblem legendaries from the past. You've got tons and tons and tons of paralogs and xenologs, as if the main story wasn't enough. And that's just the beginning. Like, this game is just overflowing with new, but yet it's so brilliantly old school, but yet at the same time it's so new school, because as great as the gameplay is, it can't even hope to stand a chance without a good storyline. And I think that's one of the reasons why Shadow Dragon was by far my least favorite Fire Emblem, is it kept the gameplay well, but it had almost no story. In fact, it had such little story, I don't even remember what the story is, apart from defeat the Shadow Dragon. So, I'm not going to spoil too much of the storyline, because, let's face it, who wants to just Google a story rather than experiencing it firsthand? To find out, like, whoa, so that's who that masked man is? I'm sure everyone knows now, because the game's been out for like 3 years, but if you played it firsthand like I did and didn't know ahead of time, you're in for quite the reveal that internet spoilers just can't keep up with. Anyway, reveals aside, the game's ending is where things get really disturbing, because at the time, I got to the final battle of Awakening, and after being thoroughly mesmerized by the like 5-chapter incredible final battle in Radiant Dawn, I got to this one and I was like, it's pretty to look at, and it's got some cool music, but the battle itself is kind of underwhelming. And then the choice at the end was kind of cool, but it didn't fundamentally change the gameplay. Until I heard that this was going to be the last Fire Emblem. That's when all of a sudden everything changed. And in fact, I came to that realization after I was on YouTube and I looked at a video, actually a couple of videos, because it's still kind of ambiguous. 2 videos that described a fan translation of the id Purpose music, which is the final battle theme. Also a shortened version is in Smash Brothers. Both versions. And it's in pseudo-Latin, kind of like the theme song of Brawl, so it's a rough translation, but it essentially boils down to stuff like, I pray to the heavens that we will not die, or our bonds of friendship are what keeps us together. And I encourage you to watch those videos for yourself, because I'm probably doing a terrible injustice. But the thing is, not only was the choir singing about the events of the game, which it very much was, it was singing about the franchise. I pray to the heavens that we will not die. If this game doesn't sell enough copies, our franchise is toast. And then, rather than letting you determine which ending you get based on certain parameters, like your clear time, or how many enemies you took out, like games like Metroid and Kid Icarus did, they just put the choice directly into your hands. What are you going to do? And you could have been the worst Fire Emblem player possible, or you could have been the best. You could have unlocked everything, or just been like, just get to the game. And yet you still have just as much force in the end as you did at the beginning. Because if it wasn't for us, the players, giving our money, our real cash money, to the game retailers, Fire Emblem Fates wouldn't be here. Oh man, I don't have a copy with me on hand, but suffice to say that... Oh, here we go. This'll do for now. So I got myself a nice Fire Emblem Fates themed 3DS cover. This would not exist without us, literally. Me, flesh and blood, stupid long hair and everything. And you, the loyal supporters who have been with Fire Emblem since the beginning. It is thanks to you that this happens. That is why they put the decision of the final battle into your hands. Because it wasn't just a battle to save the world. It was a battle to save the franchise. And then, if you know what actually happened in the game, then it puts it into even more perspective. And quite honestly, from that kind of standpoint, it's one of the best endings I've ever seen in a video game. Certainly I've seen better from a gameplay standpoint, like 999 for instance, which is still my all-time favorite ending like of any series, video game or otherwise, but from a historical standpoint, you can't get much better than Awakening. So, if you have already played through Awakening, I urge you to play that final battle scene again, really listening closely to the dialogue, and maybe even saving your game and then getting both endings to find out how it plays out, and then think to yourself, like, which ending is which? Is it the ending where Fire Emblem Awakening sold enough so that Intelligent Systems was able to make Fire Emblem Fates? Or was it the decision where Fates was doomed, or the Fire Emblem franchise was doomed for all of eternity, all because you were the one that pushed the series to its end? Player choice is usually prevalent in those Xbox 360 and PS3 games, but never before has player choice not only impacted the game, but an entire franchise. And, obviously, because Fates is here, and is a pretty spectacular game, it's because we all, as players, made the right choice, not only in the game, but what we did outside the game. We spent our dollars at those video game stores. We agonized over pre-ordering those releases, making sure we got them on launch day. We bought the amiibo in Smash Brothers. We got Corrin as DLC in Super Smash Bros. For Wii U. From a dying franchise that has now risen up from the ashes, kind of like Kid Icarus Uprising. And no one thought that game would ever happen too, but just give it 25 years and it can happen. But as opposed to the developer just saying, hey, you know what? Let's revive a long-forgotten franchise. Intelligent Systems left it up to us. They said, okay, you guys want to tell us how to make a game? We'll let you determine if this franchise is going to continue or not. And from the bottom of my heart, as a Fire Emblem lover from the beginning, even before I knew who Marth and Roy were, I thank you, the players, for continuing to support this wonderful franchise, the franchise of which I've made countless faith analogies, and probably will shortly after this video. The franchise that has gotten me thinking more than most of Nintendo's other franchises put together. And the franchise that will forever strengthen that strategic part of me if I ever can't get enough of those puzzle games. Thank you, my loyal players. And until the next great Fire Emblem game comes out, that is not a stupid crossover with Shin Megami Tensei, keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye.